I've been watching this field for a long time, and I've watched within the ranks of people who practice natural medicine, the standardized medicine coming on. Standardized medicine. So we're going to make this medicine so it's built to a standard of active ingredient. That's not natural. Sorry, it's not natural. It's medicine for the masses. It's one size fits all. It's measurable. It's usually overdosed. So many of our medicines are endangered and becoming extinct. Our plant is a lot more than its active ingredient. It's a whole wonderful being in its own right, and it doesn't depend on us for its value.
Well, hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Finding Equilibrium show. I'm Lawrence Mitchell, and I'm delighted to be here, delighted you're here, and delighted that my guest today is the wonderful Nancy Evelyn. Nancy, how are you today? And Nancy is how can I describe you? You've done so many things, but you're a herbalist, an iridologist, the founder of Estuary Learning. I'd love to talk a bit more about that. But you're also an astrologer. I mean, you've done so many things and a real advocate for natural healing. So I'm very excited to speak to you today. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah.
And where are you?
I'm in Newcastle, where all things viral are popping at the moment. It's really like the end of the year. This is your last podcast for the year, I take it.
I'm doing a few, but yes, no, absolutely. We're getting towards the end of the year, and I think we're all looking forward to a mental break. I know I am. Just it's been. What word would you describe 2021 for you? Has it been?
It's been an ongoing. I describe these years, as we've spoken about before, as the inter years. I think these are the years between all of that sense of social cohesion that we used to have, where we believed in certain institutions that they would be there the next day, that, the things like banks and insurances, the police would come when you rang, and all of the things you would believe in once upon a time, if you were a church person, then churches, schools, institutions that you would believe in, democracy, our forms of government, things that were reliable are not. Yeah, in fact, have been shown to be corrupt, every one of them, one by one by one. Since 2008, when Pluto went into Capricorn and did its job of reaching deep, deep down to show you the corruption and to basically dismantle and to break down and in order to renew. So we're watching one thing. Since 2008, the global financial crisis has taken out one after another of those things we used to rely on for social cohesion, grounded to dust, and as yet nothing is in its place. And so we have chaos.
Yeah.
And in place of social cohesion, what we have is over-governance, order, over-control. So we have that dual thing that we say, there's this lack of cohesion, so that goes to chaos. So here's the knee-jerk reaction, over-control, over-governance. And that has really come to the fore in the pandemic. So that what it does is, there's so much fear. There's that much control. And then who do you fear more, the fear or the control? It just gets crazy. So equilibrium in the interyears is really very much a delicate balance. I understand why you were called to that concept, because it is that journey. And we have so many tools in natural medicine to keep that equilibrium while we're in journey.
Yes. And I'd love to, for me, a tool that has been incredibly valuable has been connecting to nature. I mean, I've been in Australia now for 5 years, and if you're going to get stuck anywhere, this is a good place to be stuck. I've got the beach and the national park, and it's amazing. And for me, just being surrounded by the plants. I mean, we often think of ourselves as separate from nature, and I guess what's become very apparent to me is that we are nature. You know, we're very integrated with the natural world, and we need the natural world to be in equilibrium, to thrive. And that's such a shift. Like I look at the way we've tried to separate ourselves and create those structures that have really separated ourselves from the natural world, whereas the truth is the tools of healing are all around us. I'd love to understand, before we get into some of the tools, but I'd love to understand what inspired you in the first place, because you've been into this into herbalism and the power of natural healing for a long time. But was there a moment in time that suddenly you kind of got it? Or
yeah, I think what it was you live it. You live the life, you walk the life. Your grown-ups when you were a kid have an influence, and then there's a destiny that you're called. We each of us are purpose built for our generation. And then people, in this point, we turn around and we go, who would bring a baby into the world, into this world? Who would bring a child into this world? We don't know if there's going to be water enough or food enough, or we have no sense of what's going to happen. Will they be able to digest plastic? We go on and on. How much nutrition can you get out of digesting a credit card of plastic a week? How can you do that? And the answer is, at the end of the day, you know, they are fit for purpose. The children are life affirming in this time of great turmoil and turning over, and there's always been a bit of a baby boom at times of uncertainty, and I think it's because they are the hope for the future. They're that symbol of future, but they are also purpose built. They come in with the skills of their generation, and you look at the leaders that are coming up now, like Greta Thunberg and Malala. And, you know, like these leaders that are coming into, they're just so purpose built for this next stretch, that it gives me a sense of hope, but more a sense of like the world will be in good hands again. I don't know where we were going with that. I went back to Earth. I'm not sure. I got caught in our place in destiny. I was purpose built for my age, and I for me the sliding glass was I met Dorothy Hall, my teacher, when I was quite young, and I was like 21, and I would just come to Australia, and I've always been a plant person. I'm on my knees at the park at the tail end of Darling Street in East Balmain, looking at these tiny flowers I hadn't seen before. And that's where I met Dorothy, who was my teacher, who found me there and basically put a butterfly net over my head and pulled me into her class. And
wow.
I just never looked back. I just found my it. You know, when the iris comes up on the screen, because they used to teach, screens were like out there once upon a time. And so this is going like from the early 70s. And you just know them. It was like this memory came back, and boom, okay, I'm home. Wow. And so from that point on, and she was an excellent teacher. She was young and vital and bound, loved it, and taught everything she knew, and it was wonderful. But keep in mind, we're talking about times when people went to study naturopathy. Earth was part of that course. People would go because they wanted to learn about herbal medicine and homeopathic medicine and massage and energetic medicine, you know, acupressure to shiatsu and stuff were part of the naturopathic approach in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s when things started to change. Being a naturopath meant that you knew a little bit about everything, and then you could choose which one you would move to. But what you got from that grounding was common sense know-how of taking care of a sick person, following the laws of nature. But Earth has been taken out of natural medicine. So natural medicine now, naturopathy, is a study of modern biopharma. So these are supplements. These are not even natural medicines anymore. These are mixes of high dose minerals mixed with some herbs and some, evidence-based, and I'm throwing it away like it's simple. It's a study of its own, but it sure is not old world traditional medicine. This is what Estuary Learning has done, what we're doing now on the bridge to what we're going to bring to the table when we're on the other side of this change, is to put the earth back in natural medicine, our natural earth medicine, where the plant is the whole plant, not the active ingredient.
Absolutely. So would you, just to kind of paraphrase what you said, so would you say that the difference, like a lot of people go to see a naturopath today and go away with those formulas, so would you say that the difference is traditionally it's very holistic, like we recognize that everything is whole, and just taking out an active ingredient on its own is not going to have the impact as if you look at things in a much more holistic? Is that how you'd see it? Or?
That is how I see it. It's almost how I see it. I've been watching this field for a long time, and I've watched within my ranks, within the ranks of people who practice natural medicine, the standardized medicine coming on. Standardized medicine. So we're going to make this medicine so it's built to a standard of active ingredient. That's not natural. Sorry. It's not natural. It's medicine for the masses. It's one size fits all. It's measurable. It's usually overdosed. On a small planet that's losing its climate, we have to be, so many of our medicines are endangered and becoming extinct, and we're going into replanting. We need smaller doses of whole, with a W, whole and entire plant. And that means respecting the entire plant, not for its active ingredient. It would be like saying, I often say this to someone, oh, this is so-and-so, we love her because she's a Scorpio rising. Oh, she's a lot more than that. It's like, that plant is a lot more than its active ingredient. It's a whole wonderful being in its own right, and it doesn't depend on us for its value.
So interesting talking to you. One area I'd love to talk about in terms of different tools is the I'm probably going to say this pronounces incorrectly, but the Bach flowers, or the Bach flowers, because I know that's an area, and to be honest, that my knowledge of Bach flowers has only really come in the last, I'd say, 12 months, and I'd love to understand. Wonderful. It is wonderful, and again, I keep.
This is like the spirit of the herbal medicine, if you like. This is like the essence. They're called flower essences. And although the Bach flower remedies are English, we have so many English flowers right here. I mean, so many plants are called Englishman's foot because they went wherever they went, so, and the good and the bad, it means that the earth is a smaller place for a herbalist, but wherever it is, wherever you find yourself, that's the plants you need to know. So what neighborhood you find yourself in, you should know the medicine that grows around you, that you walk past on your footpath. That's medicine you're crossing, whether it's the chickweed or the dandelions or the verbena that's growing, or the whatever it is, the thistles. So that whatever you're doing, you should know how to use your own medicine. Cooch, simple cooch grass for bladder infections. It's just stunning. So these are medicines that we take so for granted. And it's just in the old days, we were always known in the medicines that grew around us. So the flowers are different. Edward Bach, we call him Bach. In England, he's Bach. So in Australia, we call him Edward Bach. He developed a process that involved a balance of earth, air, fire, and water in the distilling of the essence of the flower into water, and he preserved that with brandy, which is kind of nice. But the thing is, the equivalent of what you get, and it's done with intention. Now, he was a highly street physician, right? So he's a pretty up there kind of guy in the 1920s. But he was one of those liberals who didn't like inflicting pain in the name of healing. And he moved into homeopathy. But you don't realize is that he was involved in nosodes. Nosodes are bowel bacteria in homeopathic doses, right? They would be original fecal transplants that people are talking about now. You go, I know all about that. We have a whole history of this. But that's not what he's known for. Within homeopathy, he's known for his nosodes. And so here he developed he cleaned up these bowel bacteria, used them in infinitesimally small doses, and he fed them to people according not to their disease, but their personality.
Interesting.
And the flowers the same, because he decided that homeopathy also inflicted a little too much suffering in the way of the aggravation period that homeopathy can. You know, when you use a homeopathic remedy and it's spot on, right, yes, right, got it. And it's presenting the whole, you're proving the remedy. Your dose is wrong. You need less.
Okay, so that's what you're doing all the time, is trying to get that.
No, you do right. So what he did with the flowers was look at the essence of the plant. He was looking at dew on the flower. You know, like if you look at any of the flowers in the morning dew, and you can see that there's this radioactive kind of intensifying, and just taste the dew on the morning flowers. You do it, don't you?
Yeah.
All right. These are flower essences in nature. So what he's done, he's taken a crystal glass, he's taken water, purified water, he's got brandy is with it, although I think that's just water in the first batch, and he picks the flowers off with leaves and sits with it in the sun. In Australia, there's no more than 3 hours or you'll burn it. But the intention is you're sitting with that plant the day before, you're in meditation with the plant, you're connected to the plant spirit, you're completely making a high vibrational medicine, right? So your intention is to use this plant in a healing capacity. You're in tune with the plant. The flowers, being the spirit of the plant, go into the water. You sit with it in meditation in the sun, let the sun do its work into it, and your mother tincture is born. From that, you use even less. So I think that at the end of the day, I'll just reach over here, and I think it says something like 1 part per 22,000. It's not really measurable. So at best, if you were going to analyze this according to whatever analysis it would be to measure how much flour is actually in agrimony, it would be probably not measurable. It would be maybe a drop in a bathtub. And yet it has a predictable response. I can give it to a dog and get a predictable response. They don't believe it. They don't have to believe it. It's not faith medicine. You're itchy, I give you impatience, you stop scratching. You're barking all the time, I give you heather, you stop. You know, and heather is the remedy.
Exactly. So it very much is about finding equilibrium. So in those situations, you're out of equilibrium, then you're trying to find the remedy, almost the exact precise dosage that will bring you back into equilibrium to have that response.
The phrase he used was neutralize. So Edward Bach called it neutralizing negative states.
Right.
And he worked on 3 levels. And this is interesting too in terms of mind, body, spirit. So that's equilibrium as defined by somebody who was out and about in the 20s and the 30s, and right, last 100 years ago, I'm talking. And he neutralizing negative states, specific negative states with the specific remedy. I'm going to pick one out perfect for our times. I'm going to pick out gentian, right? Now this is yellow gentian, this is not gentian violet. Right? Yellow gentian is the remedy for heartbreak, along the lines where you put your whole heart and soul into something and it falls through. This is a remedy we give children a lot whose parents are, even the parents that knock the kids, you know, boom. And you find the children crawl all over the parent who's crying when they realize that they did this out of stress or whatever. And the child has that compassion to embrace the parent that just knocked it across the room. We all know this. This is life. You give that's that gentian feeling that your heart sinks right down into your stomach. It's abandonment, it's rejection, it's you put your whole heart there and it falls apart. And you've got that whole image of hearts regenerate. You give them a chance and they regenerate. The energy that's pulling down with gentian comes up. It neutralizes that space. We're finding it now. I use that example as probably quite good in lockdown, where frustrations go to such a degree and you're trying to homeschool someone when you haven't got anywhere near the skills to homeschool anyone. And just that sheer impatience and rejection and gentian for everybody, because the parents don't want to do it, or, it just comes like that. But take the business owner who puts their whole heart and soul into this little business, and all of the financial support goes to the big guys, and the little guys are closing down left, right, and center, and their whole heart is in it, and their heart is sinking down. Gentian is about equilibrium there, where you can say, how do I hold it? How can I, the word of last year's word, pivot this business to make it effective. How can I get past this sense of failure? Yes. So grief, we have a lot of grief on the menu at the moment. Different grief. So the loss of the ideal, the loss of the, people who are just starting out with new plans got shelved, and sometimes with all their life savings in it, there's a lot of grief. And then there's the grief of people who have lost people, the death grief, which gentian is very useful for. But the red Suva frangipani, which is not one of Bach's, this is in the Australian bush flower kit, but it's Suva, New Guinea, isn't it? Where am I? Fiji? Where is Suva? I've lost it.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually.
Oh, who am I asking? Anyway, red Suva, it's Suva. Somebody look it up. This is what I would say in class. Somebody look that up. I've lost it. It's in the bush flower set. And it is, anybody listening to that is yelling the answer at us. But it is the red-hearted frangipani. It's a deep red heart. We see it all over Australia. The remedy there is for such a deep loss, like the death of someone you love, where you feel like you're just bleeding out on the inside. Such a devastation. It's such a loss that there's nothing for it. You're just bleeding out emotionally. You take this, you can get through the funeral, you can get through not being with the person on their last breath, all of the sort of ways that people are dying in the last few years, different from before, of not being able to be with that person. Yeah. This is the remedy that would help you through that terrible time where you feel like you can't fully grieve because you're not there. This is equally true for people who lose people overseas and they can't get there. Yeah.
So it's like it helps you to accept, because I think going back to what you said right at the beginning, that these are the inter years. I really like that. And how do we get through the inter? And there's a huge amount of loss. We've all been affected by it. I love traveling. I can't travel. So there's all these things. Or
everything from a simple disappointment to a full-on grief.
Absolutely, go through to some of those things you said. So taking these flower remedies, they can help you accept and balance and have, I guess what I hear is have the strength or the energy to figure out what to do next. Yeah, exactly. So you're not just to take the next step, because there's always a next step. I love that.
I think it's fair to say in those instances when you lose somebody so close and when the death is nowhere near what you would have hoped for that person, what you find with the red frangipani is that it kind of gives it a seal so that you stop bleeding out. You still have a hole in the middle, and you will keep walking, and you'll go through your whatever years of everything that you need to do to readjust your life, but you're not bleeding out.
Yeah, you're containing it. I like that. I like that feeling. Yeah. And how long would you take that for? Like, would that be something you would take for a long periods, or is it?
You can take it as frequently as you like. You take it in very small doses. It's just like a couple of drops on your tongue. But you can take it for as long as you need. really. You outgrow them. And then you move on to another state. So with that kind of grief, you might need it maybe for 6 months. And there's no real hard, fast rule if you're using it for emotional reasons to take it 3 times a day. You know, there's nothing there that says, there's no rule there that can't be broken. If you carry it with you, and every time you feel like you're going to break in a million pieces, you put a couple of drops on your tongue. Rescue remedy is a blend of.
And where would you access these different flowers? Would you?
Most pharmacies these days carry rescue remedy.
Okay.
See a herbalist, see a natural therapist who works in traditional medicine. You see, none of these remedies, I think, would go through the evidence-based. Evidence-based is a tricky way of saying, if I don't find if somebody doesn't imagine that there would be a product they can market at the end of it, no one's going to really study it. Really. So if it hasn't been studied, then your line goes, there is no evidence that this works.
Yes, which means there's not a lot of money here. So let's go.
But what it means is basically you're not allowed to teach it. That's where Estuary Learning comes in, because that's where overgovernance comes in. Who's behind here? You're not allowed to teach it. I'm not allowed to teach. I've been working 40 years, whatever. I'm not allowed to teach it. I'm not allowed to teach what I know because I'm not fit to be a teacher. And then somebody else is not fit to teach what they know because it's traditional and not evidence-based. So what it is it's a heavily censored, it's a fairly heavily censored program of what's available.
It's interesting. What does it mean? Like, we hear this a lot, evidence-based. What does that mean? Does that mean, blind, double blind studies? Is that what it means? Yeah.
It means that studies have had to have been done and written up and peer reviewed. But a lot of these studies are animal studies based on animals. A lot of these studies are based on active ingredients isolated. A lot of these studies don't bear the scrutiny once they've gone through a literary review. We do have a group of fabulous, you see, academics research is also part of herbal medicine. Academic research is a very important part of herbal medicine, because what happens there is then you can review the reviews and you have the skills to understand what's a good test and what's a bad test and what's not appropriate test. Whereas someone who's a clinical person like me, that's not my field. I don't have that kind of mind. I have a mind of what's wrong with you. Here's my plant. Let's test this. How does this do? Different mind, different works completely differently. But people who study, people who analyze and analyze literary, the literary reviews of academic research are coming up with all kinds of mistakes that are totally inappropriate to put to natural medicine. And they're fabulous. Like the Sue Evans, you should talk to her. She's pretty spectacular. And what she's doing with her mob, pulling together an incredible amount of academic research into evidence of natural medicine. But that's not what we're about. We're about traditional.
Sure.
And so much of the time, when you do look at it, the modern actually justifies how it's been used.
It's interesting. You mentioned Estuary Learning. I'd love to understand a little bit more about what your purpose is. I know it's about preserving knowledge, but I'd love to understand what it is and how people can get involved.
Okay. Well, we are a collaborative movement of mentors and practitioners. There's a lot of educators among us. We come from clinical experience, and we come from quite a vast, we've gathered between us a vast wisdom of nutritional medicine and plant-based medicine and homeopathy and energy medicine. And we understand it's about the flow of energy through the plant, through the person. It's the traditional medicine. But we are a group of people who are dedicated to keeping the knowledge alive, regardless of the politics of the day. Just regardless. So that whatever the politics of the day are, whatever the governance of the day is a fashion. It's simply a fashion when the medicine and the culture of the medicine that we represent, which is natural earth medicine, which involves not just the plant, but the energy of the plant, and not just the person, but the energy of the person, and the balance of mind, body, spirit, heart. Yeah? And its connection to earth, and earth's connection to the cosmos, the cycles of life. This is medicine. This is earth medicine. So what we do is, it's very important that people keep going and getting their pieces of paper and being able to practice. Our job is, when you want to learn more, we're here. We're not a school, but we fill in the gaps. You wanted to study this, you wound up studying that, that's your ticket out, but please finish. We need you to be able to practice in the world, but take the history with you. Take the culture with you. So our job is to keep the culture alive.
That's wonderful. So do you do courses? I know you have a newsletter, but what are the actual mechanisms that can engage people to achieve that purpose?
We are not a school. What we are is a group of people who do teach. We make our prices very available for our members. We present, we do presentations. So what happens is in our education committee, we're a committee-based organization, everybody puts in, it's a not-for-profit organization. So we might have a panel discussion on anything, you know, like we have a mentoring group that does presentations on nurturing the practitioner and the sorts of skills required not to burn out, for instance, and how to survive in the modern world as a natural practitioner. But the other one that we do is we'll do things like whether it's herbs for people in menopause, for instance, women in menopause, and you'll have it from different angles and different people. We have kitchen medicine and everything from poultices, you know, old-fashioned medicine, everything from poultices to, you name it. Case studies, we do something called a mind meld every month. Wow. Which is somebody takes a person and presents their case, their iris, their background, whatever it is their modality is, because we embrace the widest possible expression of natural earth medicine. That is the embrace.
That's wonderful. So it's practitioners you're learning, and then the actual practitioners, is there like a list that is available to the public who's looking to
public? We're not actually for the public. We are for the public in the sense that people, if you see a practitioner who is a member of Estuary Learning, you're going to have access to a lot more, you know, it ripples out. You can be a member, a subscriber to our newsletter. A newsletter goes out every 2 months, and there's some really lovely stuff in our newsletter. But our practitioners and our students who are wanting to be practitioners, and people who live the life, who want to be an associate member, you know, that they're involved. That in a sense is behind the full membership. So anybody can be a subscriber, and please do subscribe. There's all sorts of tips in our newsletter. But our members' newsletter is much more instructive. It's much more everything from practical, name me something. I've hit a
practical tools. Yeah,
magical tools.
Magical tools. Yeah.
And also invitations to our quite extensive now library. We have created a library of all our members' presentations and all of what we call the mind melds. So you see, if you put a case, I'm going to say a case, but we treat people like people. We don't ever treat the disease. That's not our way.
Yes.
We don't ever treat the disease. Doesn't.
And that is the fundamental difference, as I understand it. You're treating the whole person.
Whole person.
To help them get back to balance, as opposed to this condition or this disease.
So a herbalist may present the case, but we've got a screen full of little faces from every different modality going, well, I think if we did some resource therapy, we would find some. And somebody else is saying, I think with raw, rekindling ancient wisdoms, we would go. And then energetically here and homeopathically, I think that remedy would come in here, and then herbs at a different dose. And it's real knock around.
Wow, amazing. So it's a real collaboration. You're bringing together all of this different knowledge, but it's all focused on healing the whole person, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it's about. And it's about maintaining the connection, which is another one of your words. That's what balance is about, is the connection. You're wobbly on your foot and the rope we're walking on, and the person next to you holds your arm so you're steady. That's what we're about.
Yeah, and I've got my model, but connection is the middle pillar. There's 5 pillars, and connection, because exactly as you say, it's like if it was balancing, ultimately connection to self, to other people, to the earth, to the plants, to the animals. It's all to the cosmos. It's all connection. And if you're feeling disconnected, then you're out of balance. You're out of equilibrium. Just moving on, we're almost out of time, but there's so many questions. I think we'll definitely have to do a part 2. But you wrote a book, the Herbal Medicine Chest, back in 1986, I think it was. It's a long time ago. But I'm curious whether that book is still relevant today, or whether there's things that have moved on, because it's a handbook for everyday problems, I think, is what you called it. And it feels that
have you seen it?
I haven't had a chance to look at it in detail, but
It's
I've seen it online.
Still out there.
Yeah, I think I tried to get a copy the other day, and I think there are some copies available on Amazon. So, but
I haven't seen royalties for it since 1992.
Okay.
It has its own life. It just went out, and you know what? Who cares? Really, I just couldn't go anywhere near caring about that. But it went out. It went to the United States, and there it got lost. Found its way wherever it finds its way. It finds its way. I lost track of it.
Yes,
but nothing has changed. Everything that's in it is still today. I could reprint it, which maybe I will. Who knows? But the point is that it's out there. If you can get a copy, get one. And everything in it is still just as vital as it was now. It talks about herbs you're not supposed to use, but you will again. One day. It talks about comfrey. Yeah, we use it. Yeah, go. It talks about garlic, and it just is plain speaking. But it came out of a workshop I did in Brisbane, which was has always been my way with my clinic. Wherever I went, I would just open up little classes for anybody who was interested in anything. Like of my clients, I would invite them to a class. I'm just doing this little class on flower remedies, for instance. You like them, you're good at them, and invite 10 people. And out of those 10, 4 would turn out to be practitioners.
Right.
It's like, ooh, you get that kind of, I see you.
It's like
you got the magic. And your people, you go places to find your people. So I think that Estuary Learning is, in a sense, is good for anybody who wants to learn more and wants to study whatever course you're doing. Join us as a student. If this is your medicine and you get that calling that says, I'm connected to the earth, I'm connected to the old ways. No one's teaching what I want to learn. I'm just enrolled in this course here, and it's a la. Apply. So our main thing is not so much your credentials in the way of how many pieces of paper you have. It's, are you a fit? Are you generous with your knowledge? Are you nurturing? Are you kind? Do you respect all forms of natural healing and not just your own.
Mm.
Those are the things that we look at.
That sounds wonderful. We're almost out of time. Last question, and I ask.
I'm just getting relaxed.
We can continue. I've got 2 more questions. One question I ask all of my guests is, what does finding equilibrium mean to you? I'd love your perspective on that.
I think the answer is in mindfulness. I really do. I think the answer is in being able to get to that moment before the reaction, to just go, that is not necessary.
Mm.
I don't always get there. Hey, I just, open my mouth and the horse bolts, but it's like, that is the answer. That's the goal, at any rate, is to get there before it explodes and ruins the day.
Mm.
Equilibrium to me is being able to move slower in a fast world, and just taking the time to be in touch with your world around you. I have a very dear friend of mine is a pigeon who calls in. It's a wild pigeon that he calls in. We call him Dodo, and they're just that kind of interspecies friendships are really important to me and connect me to the wild. And I have particular birds. I'm very bird-centric and dog-centric and connected that way. I think to get out of that position of thinking that humans are special.
Yes, I think that's very true. I mean, living here, I've learned, because growing up in England, we didn't have an indigenous community, whereas of course in Australia we do.
Aren't the Druids indigenous?
But they kind of are. But it's not the same as coming here, where you've got a more visible indigenous community.
We have a very strong living Aboriginal culture that goes back forever and ever and did wonderful things with this earth.
Yeah.
Before other indigenous people from other indigenous came and took over.
I know, it's interesting, but you can't help to feel when you listen to some of the indigenous elders and they talk about living in harmony with the earth, you can't help to feel that they've got it right, and somewhere along the line we've got it wrong, and we're looking to almost come back to what we've already known, because that kind of feels to me, and you may disagree with this, but often we see modern science proving what indigenous communities have known all along, and then so we feel that we're being very modern and very futuristic, and there are some brilliant inventions, don't get me wrong, but you do feel that if we could really collaborate with modern science, modern technology, ancient wisdom, ancient knowledge, and bring it together, then of course that's going to provide the most balanced world for future generations to exist. And it requires quite a big shift, I guess, in mindset from feeling that people, because it was the Aboriginal, the indigenous First Nation people who said that to me. Like I went to Uluru and they said, in indigenous and Aboriginal culture, we see people at the bottom rather than the top. And it was such a kind of shift. And you think, of course, it's like, of course we're at the bottom, because we're so dependent on everything else to be truly healthy. Whereas when we feel that we are at the top, then of course we have the situation that we have in many parts, and we destroy things.
Absolutely. I think the thing for me is that, why does it have to be that it's only when things are so out of control and so ruined that we go back to the people who know how to regulate it, who have been so disregarded, to fix it? It's just nuts. Nobody knows this land like the First Nations. Nobody knows the land like First Nations people. And nobody knows the stars like First Nations people over their land, right? Nobody. So there, you want a teacher.
Yes, that's where you find it, and it is that passion of knowledge, because that's really what is so important. Yeah,
and its connection to the earth and connection to the history, and again that balance. Yeah. The world is a small place, though, and I think that's where, and it's gone so far, it's broken, and I think it's going to require the science to fix it that it didn't require before the science kind of invented the plastic that screwed it up. So it's like it's like one of those things. So it's the same science that's going to get us out of this, the same science that introduced the cane toad. But this is where we stand.
This is where we stand. It's interesting. Final question. I can't not ask you about astrology, because I know you're very passionate about it, as am I. And so, astrologically, I mean, how does that feature in your life? Like, do you live your life? Like, I know people who literally make their plans based on the transits. Is that how you...
I do my transits? I have a very strong sense of where my major transits are. I don't go into the everyday. I get a sense of the lunar, but I don't go into it. So Venus, Mars, Mercury, they're too quick. But I've always got my eye on Pluto. Pluto dominates my chart, and I've always got to keep an eye on it. And of course, at the moment, I've got Uranus transiting my midheaven, which is why I'm here. That's the technology of the moment. It sort of opened my consideration to be here. So I've never done a podcast before.
Really? Well, you're a natural, definitely. So, and any final thoughts? Where can people find out more about you and about your work and about Estuary Learning?
At the moment, it's Estuary Learning .com. Oh no, it isn't that. It's www.estuarylearning.org.au.
Okay.
Find out about us. We've got a good sense of community. You want to learn more? That's a good place to start. You want to study some? Talk to us. We've got such fine teachers connected to some courageous courses that are still out there.
It sounds wonderful. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you, and let me acknowledge you for everything you've done over many years in this area, and for continuing to champion the importance of natural health, earth medicine, and all the things that we've talked about today. Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing the conversation next time. Definitely have to do a part 2. I think maybe we'll focus more on astrology that time. But okay. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you now.